Are you a movie buff? Do you love dissecting and analyzing your favorite films? Look no further than the Projection Booth podcast. Join host Mike White and a bevy of guest experts as they explore the history, themes, and legacy of cult classics, obscure gems, and mainstream hits. Join us every week for a unique and engaging look at your favorite movies. So sit back, grab some popcorn, and tune in to the Projection Booth podcast, available on all major podcast platforms.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, a podcast where every other week we take a look at Indian cinema, be it Bollywood, Tollywood, Collywood, everything in between. I am the host of the Culture Cast, Chris Stachiw. This is a spin-off show from the Culture Cast. If you want to hear more episodes of, well, us talking about Indian cinema, you can find them here and over at the Culture Cast. Once a year, we did an entire month of it. On this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, I am joined by my good friend. He is a musician. He is the host of several shows over on the Weirding Way Media Network, including, but not limited to, Noise Junkies, Night Mr. Walters, and Wolf and Raisin, the Banachek podcast. He's also on the Culture Cast from time to time, and he's known Father Malone longer than anybody else has known Father Malone that I know. Your friend and mine, HP.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here, and I'm impressed you got all that out without having to stop for breath. It's impressive.
Yeah, I'm like one of those lizards. I breathe through my eyelids. So
you're a pro. You're a consummate pro. It's great.
And on this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, HP and I are going to be talking about a more contemporary film. I mean, we talk about kind of all kinds of movies, all kind of Indian cinema here, old movies, new movies, everything in between. We're going to be talking about a little film from 2018 that got a whole lot of notoriety, won a lot of awards. Why is that? Because it's a good movie. We're going to be talking about Sriram Raghavan's Andhadhun, which is roughly translated to Blind Tune. So the film does star Tabu, Ayushmann, Khurrana, Radhika Apte, and Anil Dhawan, and it is, like I mentioned, directed and written by Sriram Raghavan. And it's all about, well, Akash, who is a blind pianist who gets wrapped up in a murder involving a very well-known Indian star. And yeah, there's going to be spoilers. I think we could just get this out of the way here before we even talk about it. This movie is worth watching. I think it's best to go into it knowing nothing, like you probably did, like I probably did. Do not look this movie up ahead of time. Just know that it's about a blind musician, and that's it, because this movie's fantastic. Harris, non-spoilery talk, but what would you say your overall thoughts are not spoiling the movie?
So not spoiling the movie. So I would, look, I came into this not well acquainted at all with Indian cinema, but if I was going to compare this to something that maybe Western audiences might be more comfortable with and understand, would be something maybe like a Coen Brothers movie. Right. Like I've seen it compared to Fargo, and I think that's a pretty fair comparison. It's a very black comedy with aspects of a thriller. It's suspenseful, and it's It's funny as hell. It's a black comedy kind of at its core, but there's all sorts of other elements that play into it, much like a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It is it is one of the more kind of, I would say, interesting Indian cinema movies because it really leans on things that are very, like you've already mentioned, recognizable to a Western audience. This is a perfect entry point into Indian cinema for a Western audience. It's on Netflix, which is super easy for anybody to find. B, it's on Netflix. And C, it's on Netflix, which everybody effectively has at this point. And I know Prime Video exists and I know YouTube exists. But again, the fact that any of these movies are able to be found so easily in the States, I will never be able to appreciate that any more than I already do, which is immensely, because sometimes it is a struggle to find these movies, unfortunately, because, well, it's a struggle to find a lot of things pre-1990s that came out in this country, at least, and try finding something that came out in India in the mid 70s and finding American subtitles for it. So I appreciate the hell out of this, that this is on Netflix, but all that out of the way, this is one of the best Indian cinema films I've seen. It's just, when you think you have the film figured out, it takes another turn, and it never feels like, at least for me, it never feels like it takes a turn that isn't unearned. And also, you know, our mutual friend, FM, him and I have talked about movies with twists before, and they seem to irk him because most of the time, as someone like yourself or myself or himself, we watch movies all the time. So we're seeing these tropes being recycled. While I felt like I knew where this movie was going, it really surprised me, which doesn't factor into whether or not I liked it, but I appreciate that even as a consummate cinephile like I happen to be, and I know you are, I can still be surprised narratively by films. And this is one that really surprised me. It shouldn't be surprising to anyone that this movie is successful. It's been remade 3 separate times in India as Maestro, Braharam, and Andhadhun. So in Telugu, in Malayalam, and in Tamil. So, I mean, that alone should give you an idea of the success of this movie. But yeah, let's talk spoilers. So you mentioned the Coen brothers, and that I think is the best comparison, because I wanted to say like neo-noir, but it's not. But it at times kind of like wants to be, and it feels like it's going to be, but then it abandons it, and I think rightfully so, for something else. But the Coen brothers, I think, is like the perfect kind of comparison, at least like you said, for a Western audience.
Yeah, and I think what you said is I couldn't agree more, that this movie takes a lot of twists and turns and goes in places you don't expect. But for me, this is my entry point into Indian cinema. The only other picture I think I've ever seen that qualifies would be something like Monsoon Wedding, which I think was made with the intent of a broader audience 20 years ago or whatever. But
great film, by the way.
No, it is. I not to put it down as something that's mass marketed, but for me, the thing, what you said about everything being earned is true, because what I kept expecting as an uninitiated viewer is it never took a turn into the fantastical or something that just seemed completely like out of the realm of the universe of the movie. It never got too weird, if that makes sense there, where it takes place in this, it's an odd little universe that it takes place in, if you will, but it's not fantastical, and it's very well grounded, and the characters all, the motivations are clear. And I felt a little bit, it was nice for me to be eased into this genre of cinema that I had no familiarity with, in something that had recognizable Western tropes, and it felt familiar to me, and I could really get into the picture a little bit more and kind of appreciate the non-Western aspects of it.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of the setup and the characters. So like I mentioned, you have Ayushmann Khurrana playing Akash, who is this blind musician. At least that's what we're led to believe in the setup of the film. And he is trying to improve his piano skills, and he runs into Sophie, whose father owns a bar, and he starts going to play at the bar for the patrons.
Yeah, technically, Sophie runs into him with her scooter.
After saying to someone else, are you blind?
Right.
the point she then hits the supposed blind man. And he brings her to their bar, and he essentially sets up a residency in the bar with the piano, and he's playing for the patrons. One of the patrons, played by Anil Dewan, he plays Pramod Sinha, who is kind of a kind of like Amitabh, I guess. They're trying to make him be this like old school, really famous, well-known Indian cinema actor. And he comes in with his wife, played by the fantastic in everything she's in, Tabu. She plays his wife, Simi. And he wants to hire Akash to come to their apartment, their high-rise apartment, and play as a surprise for her on their anniversary. And Akash, who we find out before he goes, I think in one of the best parts in this entire movie, when I didn't expect him to not be blind. I'm just going to level with, like, I didn't expect that one of the immediate twists in the first 20 minutes of the movie was, oh, he's not actually blind.
He narrates and he basically says, focus is important to a musician. And the way that he's able to focus on these complex, he's trying to learn a song for a competition. He pretends that he's blind so that he is focused solely on his hands, on the music, and can exclude everything else around him. So he puts in like contact lenses that I presume make him blind. Essentially, he can't see, and he sleeps with a mask so he can get around his apartment. And yeah, he lives essentially. We don't know how long, but we can presume for a long time, long enough that everybody in his orbit, they all believe he's blind. They don't even suspect the thing.
But he's not at all.
No, he's not. He's not
blind.
And literally, it's revealed, like you said, within the first 20 minutes. So this is a critical spoiler. Like it's not, but there's so much more to come. So many twists and turns and things that it's almost like this is just an appetizer for what's to come.
Well, and the way that they do it is so smart. They don't make any like fanfare of it. You just see him looking in the mirror, and then you see him take the contacts out, and that's it. That's all the director and the cinematographer give you. It's not this, him taking the contacts out. Oh my God, he's been able to see this whole time. And I think that, like you just mentioned, it really set the tone for me, because I was like, oh my God, like you're doing this right now. Like where are you going in the next, 2.5 hours? Because this movie clocks in at about 2 hours and 15 minutes, which is, on the shorter side of a lot of Indian cinema. There's a reason for that. There aren't a whole lot of musical numbers in the film. There are 2 or 3, but they're not the way that they are normally in Indian cinema, or at least the way that I assume you probably expected they were going to be, right?
Sure. Yeah, and it has to be said, like the few that are in there, they're fantastic.
Right.
Like I got a taste of what, like stereotypically what I would expect, right, which is there were no elaborate choreographed musical numbers like, someone who doesn't know a lot about it would expect. But the ones that are there, like the first one is basically he's playing at the restaurant, and the song lyrics are reflecting on his kind of getting swept up in the romance with Sophie and how happy he is. And the camera's gliding all around, and it's beautiful. It's beautifully shot. And it has to be said also, these musical numbers all have lyrics that comment in some funny way to what's happening. Like in this case, like the lyrics make reference to his eyes and how, his innocent eyes or something. And it's like, because we know that he, it's almost a wry comment on the fact that we know that he's fooling everybody into thinking he's blind, but the song is all about eyes. It's interesting. I don't know. I thought that was fascinating.
Well, and what's funny is, this isn't the first time someone has mentioned it, but I've never gotten a chance to kind of give my, at least not headcanon, but kind of the way I interpret songs in Indian cinema. Obviously, in this one, I would say it's more or less, you could classify it as diegetic, even like the musical numbers, right? Because he's performing in the space for those people, while it kind of goes into more flights of fancy a little bit, where you kind of have things happening that wouldn't be happening in a space performing for music for people. A lot of the Indian cinema, at least a lot of the songs, I always kind of interpret them as like, we're taking a moment to see inside the character's head and kind of how they're feeling, or how they would be feeling through the context of song. And that is something that I do appreciate, and clearly you do as well, that the songs aren't just, it's a musical number in the vein of a musical where there's some sort of plot furthering or character growth through the music, which like yourself, I appreciate that. I understand how in a movie like this, they could have gotten wrapped up in like overloading it with music because he's a musician, but him being a musician ends up not being as big of a deal as you would think, which I, again, kind of appreciate because it's not that I was worried, but I was kind of like, oh, is this going to be like a music heavy film because he's a musician? And they didn't go there. But like you said, the music numbers that they do have are so good. I kind of wanted more.
Yeah, I agree. But at the end of the day, like, you know, when all is said and done, really, they could have made him a chef, right? A blind chef that has to go to the house to make a dinner for the couple. And it wasn't, him being a musician was a nice way to work in some music and kind of add that color to his personality. But it could have been almost anything, and it wouldn't have taken away from, like, it wasn't central to the plot. It was a means to an end, in my opinion.
Which I appreciate. So Akash goes to this apartment and he shows up, and the wife says, hey, you know, I don't know who you are. Why are you here? He says, hey, your husband called me. Let me in. And he comes in, and again, he's having to pretend that he's blind. And he walks in and he sees it before the audience sees it. But we find out that the wife, Simi, has, along with the inspector, Manohar Jawanda, played by Manav Vij, have murdered her husband. Though she claims it was an accident, we don't ever get any kind of confirmation.
We never
what it was, but
we never. That's the interesting thing, because we presume it was murder, but all you ever see in a flashback, and this movie is filled with unreliable narrators, which flash forward will be crucial to the end of this movie, but we'll get to that. But all you end up seeing is Pramod comes home. He's going to surprise his wife. Now, it has to be said, his wife is very much younger than him. He's an older man.
Right.
So there's a little bit of tension around the fact that she is, you know, a much younger woman.
And I
for this older
appreciate
man.
that they give it that scene at the beginning of the movie where you see the relationship between the two of them, and it doesn't seem antagonistic. You kind of get, there's that kind of fake out, which that fake out works. Because again, don't know where this is going, but there's this like fake out of her claiming that he's going to poison her. And then she's like, no, I was just acting. But I appreciate that the movie takes the time to give us a scene between the two of them so that we can see, well, this isn't some sort of antagonistic relationship. They're not at each other's throats. Like ostensibly, it seems like they love each other.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this movie, it's interesting. They made reference to a lot of Shakespeare, and it kind of starts in that scene because they have this playful banter. He's recording her doing a fake cooking show, and they're being very sweet to each other. And then she hugs him, and she's been cooking with peppers or something. And she wraps her arms around his neck to hug him. And you see that her hands are red from whatever she's cooking,
right?
Giving you that idea, like there's already blood on her hands before she's actually done anything, which is a reference to Macbeth, which is also referenced later. Somebody calls her offhandedly Macbeth, and someone actually makes reference to Hamlet. I just thought that was kind of cool. But at the at the beginning that there's something not right here, because they really hammer home the fact that she has, you know, metaphorical blood on her hands, or will be involved in something that is maybe a bit unsavory. So, but yeah, and it's a wonderfully tense scene, getting back to when Akash has come to the house, and he sees that, you know, there's stuff strewn all over the floor. There's candy and flowers, and there's blood. And there is her husband, Pramod, and he's dead. He's slumped in the hallway. And I think she takes him into the bathroom, right? Because he says he has to go to the bathroom. Yeah. And he goes into the bathroom, and the inspector is in there. And it's so, you don't know what's going to happen. You feel like anything could happen. He could get shot by this guy. He's got to walk a very fine, you know, tightrope to make sure that he's seeing enough, but he doesn't want them to suspect, because once they think that he can see, anything could happen. He could be murdered right there.
Right.
So then he comes out, she takes him to the piano, and she tells him to play. And it's really ostensibly from his point of view, while he's playing this song, and she every once in a while will applaud to keep him, thinking that nothing's wrong. They clean up the body. They stuff the body into a giant suitcase. Then they have to open the suitcase to get his watch, the dead man's watch, and his rings off his hand. And this is all happening in real time as he's playing and pretending that he's not seeing what I'm just even thinking about it. It was so suspenseful. It was wonderful.
I wish I could have written a scene as well as this. Like, I know that there is essentially another 2 hours of the movie afterwards.
Yeah.
But that scene alone is just a masterclass in how you build suspense with so many moving pieces. Because so many things, and mind you, we've called him the inspector now a couple times, the kind of the confederate of the wife. We don't know at the time he's the police inspector, which is which is again another twist, because once Akash gets out of the apartment, he goes, as any of us would, he's like, oh my God, I got to get to the cops. I got to tell the cops, walks into the police station, sits down. He says, I got to tell somebody there's been a murder. All right, we'll go get the inspector. Who walks in but the guy that he just saw? And
it's Mohinder. Yeah.
Holy shit. Like the movie's been going for 30 minutes at this point, and we're already so far into the rabbit hole of the movie that you can't 30 minutes in and you don't even know where this movie's going because it's already gone so many places in such a short span of time. Yeah,
you're sucked in because now you're like, what is going to happen here? Everything that's this is why it's like a Coen Brothers movie, because it's like one mishap after the next that just keeps on snowballing. And then so then he changes his story that, oh no, it was a cat. So then they say, all right, Inspector Mohinder, you take this guy to his apartment. Now he's got to go to his apartment with the guy that he knows is frankly, he thinks is a murderer. Maybe he's not, but he believes he is. And the guy's asking him all these questions. What color is the cat? How do you know what color the cat is? You're supposed to be blind.
I loved that. I loved that question. That was such oh my God, the script writing in this movie, it drives me nuts that it's just it's so perfect. Like they're asking the questions that someone who has seen movies like this and has seen somebody write these scenes before would go, yeah, but could we ask this as well? And it further reinforces, he has to be so perfect in all of these scenes. Akash does. Even from just him as a performer standpoint, because he sells it for the audience long enough that we believe it, but he has to keep selling it for the characters in the movie. And he's doing that really well, even in those scenes. And when you get to see him he's in another room and all of a sudden he's not in eyesight of the inspector. So he's grabbing his contacts and doing things. It's I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it really bums me out that I had never heard of this movie before, because this movie is crazy. It's actually insane.
The tension of those scenes, I can't describe it other than it was exquisite. Mm-hmm. That's such a flowery word, but it was if you're not, as a viewer, if you're not grabbed in those 30 minutes to what you've just witnessed and you want to see how this is going to end up, I don't know what to tell you. You're not it's you can't help but be sucked into the movie at that point. It's so great.
And that for me, I've thought about movies that I would introduce people to that would be good entry points for Indian cinema. This may now be the movie for me because, again, 2 hours and 2.25, it moves along at a crazy clip. I mean, again, we've been talking for about 25 minutes and we're only about a third of the way into this movie. And we haven't even talked about the crazier things where this movie ends up kind of really going. But the fact that within the first 30 minutes of the movie, we have a murder, a blinding and an unblinding, and then all of this tension with kind of him trying to outwit the murderers post-murder, and then that's what this movie feels like, just then. But oftentimes with a movie like this, they kind of, by doing all the twists, they twist themselves into a corner, and then they set it up, but they don't know how to pay it off. That being said, turns out that the neighbor saw Akash come home. She remembers the order of people. She knows that the inspector came before he did. She knows that the husband came before he did. She goes and tells the other inspector at the funeral, hey, by the way, the order of the people showing up wasn't correct. Well, that neighbor, that neighbor gets would you say, unsummarily taken care of?
It's so abrupt. Like, you know, it has to be said. I think what basically, like, it's implied and not so implied that the police are just corrupt. Like,
Right.
you need money to really get anything to happen. So it really shouldn't be surprising that they're not taking her seriously. But yeah, so Simi hears this or figures out or finds out that she's been saying no. There was another man that came before her husband, and then there was another guy after the fact. So now, you know, but then so Simi basically just I'm not gonna just there's no other way to say it. She throws the older neighbor over a ledge, just threw her to her death.
Yeah.
Just complains of a headache. The woman goes to get her an aspirin or something. She comes back, and then she just shoves her right off the ledge with no real fanfare. It's just like, boom, that's it.
And this is still when Akash is supposed to be blind. And of course, they wouldn't give you this scene without giving you something more. They have the elevator doors of him that he's in opening as she's throwing her off the ledge. And he has to pretend that he's blind and didn't see it. It's like every opportunity in this movie where they have a chance to really do just that little bit more, they do. And that's what makes this movie so much better than the kind of movie like this that I've seen before, where it just wants to, crazy twist, and that's it. Like, this is just like ratcheting it up and ratcheting it up and ratcheting it up in a logical way. Because, like we've mentioned, the inspector and the wife are in cahoots, but the inspector also has his own wife who he's trying to evade her finding out. And and she also has a daughter that she's trying to evade finding out that she murdered her husband, the daughter's father. There's so many like moving parts in this movie that being like, there's a reason the script has 5 names on it. And yet somehow 5 names doesn't make this movie convoluted in a negative way.
No, it's in a good way. It's absolutely a good way.
Yeah. So Simi and Akash go back to his house. And this is, again, I didn't see this coming, no pun intended. She poisons him, finds out that he's not blind. And by poisoning him, I mean, she actually makes him blind.
Well, I was wondering about that because I thought, so she comes in and she gives him prayer offerings.
Like ladus, like sweets.
Yeah. So he eats them and then they sit down. He brings them coffee, and just to test, like she suspects that he's not blind. So as he's pouring it, she pours something out of a little vial into his coffee to basically force him to admit, like, because he's not going to drink the stuff. Right. And then you find out that she's drugged the prayer offerings, but it wasn't clear to me, like, because he passes out, was something in the drug what caused him to go blind, or did she do something? Because they say later on that he needs to have a cornea transplant. Right. So I was thinking after the fact, like, initially I thought, it was something in the drug that made him go blind. But I also thought, I could also see her blinding him while he's unconscious, because his eyes are all messed up.
They're like
when he wakes up,
they look like the contacts.
Yeah. And he, it's really crazy. But somehow either she poisons him and he gets blinded from that, or she like does something to his eyes while he's passed out.
She tells the inspector, she's like, there's plenty of ways to look up on the internet how to blind someone. I just Googled it out of curiosity. I couldn't find anything. So I don't know. Look, I have no idea. I'm just going to go off of what she said, but like, I didn't know that there was something you could give to someone that would make their eyes like do that.
Well, I know, like, I've heard, like, in the days when they were making bathtub gin, like it was so strong that it could blind you. Like that was a real danger back then. So I don't know. I don't think that figures into this at all. But at the end of the day, it's just a little more kind of like, I don't know, not just kind of chilling if she did something to his eyes while he was asleep. I find that a little bit creepier, if you will. But he wakes up and he's now blind, and he freaks out as you would expect that you would, waking up and now being blind. But talking about all these pieces kind of fitting together, basically at the same time, like, so he passes out, and the woman from the beginning, Sophie, the woman that ran into him with her scooter, is now they've had a romantic relationship. They've gotten intimate, and she's coming to his apartment, and there's a little boy who's you get the sense he's kind of a troublemaker outside of, he's always hanging
little
around.
Shit is what he is.
Right. So unbeknownst to Akash, he's secretly filmed him going through his non-blind ritual. Like he's recorded him with like a stick and a phone to prove that, I don't know what his motivation was, but he proves that he's not blind.
I guess it's like he didn't like him. Like that's like the only thing in the movie that kind of felt like a slight contrivance was that kid having an issue with him. But I guess it's just they just didn't like each other, right?
He's just an agent of chaos. Right. So Sophie gets there and the kid says to him, well, hey, pay me 50 rupees and I'll show you my video. Basically, he shows Sophie the video proving that he's not blind. So she storms up to his apartment to give him a piece of her mind. And Simi comes to the door as if she's getting dressed. She basically implies that she puts on this display that maybe she's had an affair with Akash.
I guess so. Yeah.
So Sophie freaks because he's passed out in the bed half naked. So Sophie understandably says, she's upset. She storms off. She accuses him of not even being blind, blah, blah, blah. And that's when I think that's when Akash wakes up and goes, well, my God, what did you do to me?
I'm actually blind now.
Right now I'm really in trouble. But like you said, it's just one hairpin turn after the next that you don't really expect.
Well, and what's so smart is you have the scene of her coming into his apartment to go, hey, I know you're not blind. And this is at the same time where he is actually turned blind.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, it's so smart and so kind of, again, it's smart, but it's also really tongue in cheek because it's playing on your kind of expectations for what this is going to be, but at the same time also just going like, we're just going to do whatever the hell we want ultimately. And now he's blind, and yeah, like narratively he's blind. Do we know
really?
He's actually blind though, because that's, again,
this movie is filled with people who are being deceitful.
Yeah,
Akash is being deceitful from the first frame about being blind. Simi is deceitful about her affair with the inspector. The inspector is deceitful about his involvement and everything. So really, everybody, seemingly most of the people in the movie have an agenda or something they're trying to hide from somebody else. Even the hero of the piece, Akash, he's got a lot to answer for beyond the fact that he's in this predicament. I mean, he was playing at being blind. That's kind of awful when you think about it, no matter the motivation.
Completely awful. I do find it funny, and it feels like a movie thing when someone runs into someone in a movie who's blind. They have to like convince themselves, the character, that person is blind. I have met blind people in real life, as I'm sure you have, and I'm not like, hey, can you? How many fingers am I holding up? Everybody in cinema is always so suspicious of someone who's blind.
There's not a lot of that. It has to be said. There's not a lot of that in this picture.
Thankfully.
At one point, like the inspector, the guy having the affair, comes. So after this all happens, he goes to the apartment basically to kill Akash at this point. Simi has told him that he's here. And I think at one point, like he might have waved his hand in front of his face to test whether he's blind or something, but that's about it. Everybody else kind of takes him at his word that he's blind, which is good, which is refreshing because you'd expect, like you said, how many fingers? I'm going to fake punch you. Are you going to flinch? Like there's none of that.
And I also really appreciate, you mentioned that the inspector then comes to his apartment to kill him. The inspector and Simi have this back and forth a couple times in the movie, and they kind of keep repeating this line of he's blind, but he could still go to the cops. Like you should have killed him when you had the chance. Kind of keeps becoming their like reoccurring mantra in this movie is blind people can still talk. He's not mute. He's not deaf. So it's really funny because they keep finding themselves in this predicament where the only way to resolve the issue is to kill him. And
they don't do it.
Somehow they're like beyond unadept at doing it, like killing him, because he escapes and then Akash just wanders through the streets and passes out essentially.
No, he walks into a telephone pole.
Right. But then he just passes out.
Yeah. No, he's panicked and he's trying to run away, and he's blind now. And he basically, in a panic, I took it as he's running, and he runs headfirst and knocks himself out basically. And I think at that point, the inspector kind of forgets about him, or he can't find him.
Right.
And then we enter the next weird twist to the whole thing. Maybe the weirdest twist in the whole movie.
Yeah. So earlier on in the movie, we have this scene where Akash is sitting on a bench, and there is a rickshaw driver, and the rickshaw driver has a friend, and the friend is selling lottery tickets, and he's like, "Hey, can you call me a cab?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And he calls this character played by Pawan Singh called Murli, and Chaya Kadam plays Sakhu, the woman selling lottery tickets. It turns out they're in cahoots with a doctor, Dr. Krishna, who is performing organ harvesting on, I guess, people that they find in the street.
Well, but it's the way it's like set up. So he wakes up. So he's passed out, Akash, and then he wakes up and he's in a clinic, and there's the doctor there. You think he's in a clinic. Everything seems fine. Everybody's really nice. The doctor says, he tells him, we can get you a cornea transplant, but things aren't really what they seem, kind of like they say they're going to give him a shot for tetanus, but they're actually drawing blood from him, and he can't see this. And like you said, eventually it comes to light, and he still doesn't know this, that they run an illegal organ harvesting operation, and their plan, and this is so awful, they're going to take both of his kidneys. And I think one of them even says, well, won't that kill him? They said, well, who cares? Whatever.
He's
they don't
healthy,
care.
at least.
But they seem so there's nothing evil about their demeanor or about how they seem perfectly friendly, just save for the fact that they're removing people's organs against their will. So finally they bring him into an exam room, and it finally dawns on him what's happening, because they have him take off his clothes and having him lay on the thing, and they're actually drawing the line for removing his kidney, and he freaks out, and he basically, before he goes under the anesthesia or whatever, he says to them, I think he convinces the woman that he could see the tattoo on her hand, and that he can get them a lot more money than they're going to get from his organs.
Because mind you, they thought he was blind.
Right.
So how he knew wouldn't make any sense to them unless he wasn't actually blind, but is now. So and what's really funny, and again, a thing that I really appreciate about this movie is the character of Murli and Sakhu really are the Carl and Gere, the Steve Buscemi and Peter Stormare of the piece.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking Fargo. They're kind of like the bumbling morons who, again, they're evil, but they don't outwardly present as evil. They more present as just opportunistic morons, is more or less what they seem like. The doctor is evil. The doctor, I think, is, I guess, again, that's with a movie like this, evil and good. You could make the case that there are no heroes to root for in this movie. Maybe Sophie, the woman who hits Akash, but everybody else is varying shades of gray and or charcoal even. Yeah,
and that's the point I was making. Everybody is being deceitful or not. There's something they're trying to hide, or some aspect that isn't so nice or moral, I guess you could say. And that's the comparison to the Buscemi character in Fargo is perfect, because again, they're like this, the minute that they hear the hint that they can get more money from some other harebrained idea, they abandon the idea of taking this guy's kidneys, and they let him wake up, and then they basically concoct another weird scheme where they're going to kidnap Simi, and it basically, they're going to blackmail Manohar to get the money. Not only are they going to kidnap her, they're going to set it up to make it look like she's committed suicide, right?
Yeah.
So she's driving Akash somewhere, and he chloroforms her while they're driving. They set it up to make it look like she's committed suicide by driving off of a bridge or something.
Jumping off of a bridge. And then they have the news being like, well, she probably committed suicide because she was not a successful actress. And when her husband died, well, all of her job opportunities dried up. And it's like, Jesus, movie, And
it's
she's
like digging the knife.
She's hearing this. You're hearing this while she's being pushed in a wheelchair, blindfolded and gagged after they've kidnapped the murderous wife. She's hearing all this like just terrible things about how awful of an actress she is, which I really appreciated. Again, like they don't miss opportunities in this movie to like just do that little bit extra, that little bit more, that just like like you just said, twist of the knife, just that extra.
It's so great. But so he calls Manohar and and says like, I know you've got all this money, because they implied that when the husband was killed, he was on his way to give like some ridiculous amount of money to a contractor. So they say, like, you got all this. Yeah. So you got all this money, deliver it here, or I will expose you. And then meanwhile, the wife finds out about the affair anyway, and she makes him hole up into a bathroom while she shoots at him with his service revolver. So now if we're keeping score, he is in cahoots. He's now kind of in cahoots with the organ harvesters. They've kidnapped Simi. She's tied up in a wheelchair. Now Manohar is going to come and deliver this duffel bag full of cash or whatever. What can go wrong? Right? The answer, even more can go wrong.
Everything, because like we've mentioned, the two kind of Fargo-esque bumbling moron characters, well, they get some autonomy of their own, and they double cross Akash so that they can just take all the money themselves and not split any with him. And they tie him up along with Simi, and they leave him, and they go to get the money from Manohar, which goes about as bad as humanly possible.
Yeah,
I guess
it's bad. Yeah,
Manohar kills one of them by shooting him in the neck, and then Manohar gets trapped in an elevator and kills himself by accident.
He freaks out and shoots himself by accident. Yeah.
And I guess he's dead. We never see him again. So
yeah, I mean, it's pretty much, if something like that happens in a movie like this, I guess you should assume that they're dead.
Yeah, because we hear that bing bing. He shoots his revolver in a closed elevator, and you hear the bing 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 thunk, and it's like, so yeah, I guess he's dead. Sure. Yeah. I mean, we never see him again, so it's the perfect way for a character like that to die unceremoniously. Just there you go. Yeah, he's dead. All right, moving on.
Yeah, I mean, for his presumed crimes, it's up for debate whether he actually killed the husband or if the husband just shot himself by accident. But certainly he's not blameless in all of this. So one would say maybe that's an apt way for him to go. But yeah, so the one guy gets shot in the neck. The woman takes him to the hospital. So they're kind of out of the picture at this point. He dies. I don't remember exactly what happens to her. She's upset. The doctor says to her when she's in the hospital with the counterfeit money. That's right. The money's counterfeit.
Right. Which would, I guess, does that have some sort of bearing on the husband then, the dead husband?
I guess, because up to, like you were saying, there's only really, Sophie's the only character who has no hidden, moral decay. But I guess you could add, it's debatable whether the husband is also kind of blameless, because maybe he had something else going on with this counterfeit money. I don't know.
Yeah. But I actually really appreciate that the movie never gives us a second flashback to the scene with Pramod and Simi and Manohar, the inciting incident. We never actually see it. And I appreciate that, because the only way we would see it is if a character was flashbacking it. And we know, or can assume, or by the end of the movie, we kind of find out that flashbacks may or may not actually, again, unreliable narrators, flashbacks in an unreliable narrator movie. I've seen Usual Suspects. This movie's better than that, but that's a good reference point for the character is not telling you the truth at all. And you don't know that until the end. Here, again, like, if Simi had recounted the story, who knows how true it is? Or Manohar, I didn't kill him. It was a mistake. Like, of course you would say that. That would be what you would be saying to get out of it.
It would only have underscored, like you said, even if we saw a flashback where maybe the husband fights back and there's a scuffle and he whatever, you're getting Manohar's or Simi's account. So you can't take it as factual. Right. There's just no way. So it keeps snowballing, and eventually they basically trick Simi into confessing the crime. Like they basically record her on a phone. So now they know that she knows that, she may not have killed her husband, but she sure as hell killed the poor elderly neighbor. She shoved her off of the balcony or whatever.
Yeah.
So while this is all going on, and at this point, we also have a quick scene where the doctor has gotten a call from a nurse about the blood that he drew. He drew blood from Simi, which I think is just standard practice for organ harvesting, perhaps.
I guess so.
But so he gets a call that gets him really excited because she says something about, we got the blood results back. And it's clear that he's excited about something having to do with Simi's, blood draw. So anyway, he's out of the picture. It's really just Simi and Akash tied to chairs. She manages to get him freed from being tied to the chair. And she's trying to guide him to break a window or get them out of this locked room. At the same time, she's untying herself unbeknownst to him because he's blind. Remember, he's blind.
Yeah.
And
remember?
And eventually she frees herself. And right at the moment that Akash has broken a window and they're ready to escape, she attacks Akash. But then just when she's getting the upper hand, who comes in but the friendly doctor, the organ harvesting doctor? And she attacks him now. And it's really kind of awful. She's stabbing him in the shoulder with a hypodermic. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, that to me, like, kind of got me like a little chilled. Like just the thought of that and the sound of it.
Awful.
It's really bad.
You see her like it's those like little patches of blood where she's like
just all over his thing. But basically, Akash restrains her at that point before she goes too crazy, and they chloroform Simi again. And now, she's done. Now they throw her in the trunk of the car and they're driving. Now this is awful upon awful upon awful. The doctor's driving. Akash is in the passenger seat. And the doctor says that he's so excited because it turns out she has a rare blood type. And there's a sheik whose daughter needs a liver transplant. And he's going to pay big money because she's a blood match. Simi is a blood match for the sheik's daughter. So they're driving the car, I think, to the airport where she will be sent to some who knows where to have her liver harvested for a transplant.
All of her organs. Organs.
And the doctor says, and if she's a match, I'll give you her corneas. But he's so matter of fact and cheerful about the whole thing because he's excited about this money that he's going to make. It's nothing to him. But meanwhile, Akash, to his credit, is like, we should really let her go. This is not right.
I can't be part of this. Drop me off.
He's very not on board. Now, here's where this to me is the most fascinating narrative choice of the movie. We didn't mention the very beginning of the movie. It starts very jarringly, where
en media res, one might say.
Exactly. So what happened? The way the movie begins, we didn't mention this, is there's a rabbit, a one-eyed rabbit that is like hopping around a field somewhere, and there's presumably a farmer or some other guy with a rifle who wants to kill this rabbit. We can presume the rabbit's a pest and he's trying to get rid of it. So the rabbit's hopping around, and the rabbit is stopped in front of, I think, like a milestone marker.
Yeah. Right
as the hunter, let's call him, has leveled his shot. And that's when at that point, we cut away to the main story of Akash and everything. But now, so keep that in your mind for a minute. Now, at this point, they're driving to the airport. Then we cut to a flash forward from 2 years, which is it's awesome.
Amazing. I was floored when the movie just goes, oh yeah, by the way, there's more. And you're right. There's more, and you don't even get to see what that was yet.
Just to say this stuff out loud makes it sound so crazy, but when you're being under the spell of this movie as you're watching it, you're in for a penny, in for a pound at that point. You're like, I can't wait to see what happens. This may be a little nonlinear, but this is great. So it's a flash forward. It's someplace in Europe, and the girl Sophie that had that breakup with Akash, she's there. She's visiting. It's 2 years from the date of what these events. And she sees a sign for Akash performing at a local club. So she gets excited or intrigued, not excited necessarily, but she's like, oh, that's weird. So she goes to see him. He's still he still presents as blind. He's performing with like a band, a full band now. And it's clear that he's had some success. And she introduces herself to him again. They go to get coffee. And essentially what you discover is that everything that we've seen up to this point is basically him recounting what happened to him, after she left or whatever, right? He's telling her the story. Now, at that point, they're still driving to the airport. I talked about this rabbit. So then we cut back. Now, the rabbit and the car driving to the airport are happening at the same time. Simi is making noise in the trunk. I apologize. I forgot this part. So they pull over to try. The doctor presumably is just going to kill her at this point because dead or alive, it doesn't matter. He's going to take her organs, presumably. So he goes to the back. Akash, still blind, doesn't know what's going on. She overpowers the doctor. I think she stabs him in the neck. Mm-hmm. Another awful, gruesome wound. A
really great shot through looking what would be towards the back of the car through the back windshield. And you see the trunk close and you see the doctor like grabbing as they're kind of like, and then you kind of see her get in the car and they start driving away.
Yeah. But Akash doesn't know that it's not the doctor driving because she's quiet. So she gets in the car, she's driving him, and he's still pleading the case like we shouldn't do this to her. It's blah, blah, blah. And eventually she pulls over and just says to him, get out, right? Now he realizes what it is. He gets out of the car. You think, okay, maybe she's going to let him go or whatever. So she lets him out. Then she drives a ways, turns around like she's going to run him down with the car. So now you're like, well, there's no redeeming anybody in this movie.
Yeah, right. It's all over now. It's all over now.
And it would have been an interesting ending had she just, but because this is now happening after a flash forward, that he's not going to die, which is an interesting narrative choice. So cut to the rabbit about to get shot by the hunter. He shoots, the rabbit leaps onto the windshield of the car that is hurtling towards Akash, trying to kill him. It causes the car to spin out of control and do a few flips in the air, fall, and explode.
Like in a movie.
Right? Or you realize that this is him recounting this tale.
Like in an unreliable Sophie. Narration.
Like the most unreliable. So she says to him, after all is said and done, so they cut back to Europe where they're having coffee, and she says, well, if I were you, I would have saved her and gotten her corneas. Like, why didn't you do that? Because at that point you think, well, she's exploded and it's all over with and whatever. He says something, I don't remember exactly what, but they get up, they say their goodbyes, and he's walking away down a cobblestone road, and there's a beer can in the middle of the road. And he's got his cane. He's blind.
His cane with a rabbit's head on it.
His cane with a rabbit's head, which figures into, that's a lot like the Usual Suspects, like that coffee something cup. That like the coffee cup, right? So you've seen this head of this cane, and you're like, there's something not right here. So he happens upon this thing in the road, this can in the road. He stops and kind of like swings his cane to whack it out of the way and then keep walking. So you're left with this idea that he's not blind. Probably everything he told Sophie is probably bullshit.
Yes. Which for me, with never has a kicking of a can in a movie had so much implications and so many narrative ramifications. It completely throws the movie on its head in the final frame. Because I wonder so many things then about the movie, narratively, metaphorically, Akash is the one-eyed rabbit, right?
Yeah.
And Simi and Manohar are the hunters throughout the movie trying to kill the one-eyed rabbit. So I wonder, because there's a scene where you see Akash and he's doing this with his eyes. One of his eyes isn't fucked up and one is. So I wonder if throughout that whole second act of the movie, could he see that entire time?
That's it. That's the impression that I'm left with. And that was what was kind of breathtaking in a way at the end of this. And I was really kind of sorry that the movie was over because it was such a delight. But The Usual Suspects is a great analog for this, where what you've seen, really in that final shot recontextualizes really a lot of what you've seen preceding that. Like, it calls everything into question. Like, he maybe isn't the like the innocent sort of bystander that got caught up in all of this. Like there's more to it than that. I think that's so brilliant.
Yeah, no, it like you said, it recontextualizes essentially the entire movie, because the sense that I get by the end of the movie is the doctor is still alive, still doing his craft in Pune. Akash now can see because he has Simi's eyes, her corneas, in her head, and she was chopped up into bits for, the highest bidder for whatever parts. That is all kinds of terrible.
It's awful.
Like there's nothing redeeming anyone in this movie other than Sophie. That's it.
Yeah, pretty much, because like you said, even the husband, Pramod, like having this counterfeit money, what was he involved with?
Right.
We know Simi is rotten to the core. Maybe the only truly innocent person other than Sophie was probably that poor elderly neighbor who only wanted to do the right thing, to report what she saw, and she got thrown off of a building because of it.
Well, and Danny, the daughter of Pramod and Simi, who is now parentless as well. So that's the other innocent of the movie.
Yeah,
but they couldn't let you know how big of a piece of shit Akash is until the final frame, because otherwise you would never have believed his story. And that the movie has to get you to the point where you believe that story at the end of the movie that he tells, until the movie says, just kidding, don't believe it. But yeah, I'm so glad that they saved it for literally the last frame of the movie to let the proverbial cat out of the bag, as it were. Because that, like you said, he is a terrible person through and through, just like the rest of them.
Right. But he's the person you've been, as a viewer, you've been tasked with, rooting for him. You don't want to see his kidneys taken out in an awful way. You don't want to see him blinded. You don't, all this stuff. But then at the end, all you're left with is, wow, I've been rooting for just a piece of shit. Like, this guy is as bad as any of them, yeah, it's, but so this is one of those movies that, and number one, it's a pleasure to recommend this to people sight unseen and say, just see this. Don't go into it with any preconceptions. Number two, this is one of those movies that you wish that you could forget about it and watch it again. It's that good. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was thinking about that when I was watching it. I was like, there won't be another viewing experience of this movie like this. Like this is the one chance that I've gotten. I could watch it with other people. I think the twists are good. I think the twists are good in a narrative sense. I'm not sure how, they're not like the twist in Malignant was. I don't know if you've seen Malignant, but that movie has a very big kind of goofy twist that, like, anytime I've watched it with anybody, they're like, what the actual fuck is happening in this movie now? Mm-hmm. There are twists like that in this movie, but there are so many that it feels more or less sustained. Like, it's not just one thing. That rarely do we recount the plot of a movie on this show or any show that I do. But yet we did it on this episode, almost because what choice do we have? There's no other choice. The movie is so complex narratively that to not talk about specific things while they're occurring in the movie, you might not even be able to follow along with us because of the path that the movie takes. It's so twisty, but ultimately, again, it doesn't peter out. By the end of it, like you said, I wanted more. I wanted more, but I don't know how much more I want to know about what Akash is up to.
Right. And it moves for a movie, like you said, that's 2 hours, 15, 16 minutes or whatever. There's not a dull moment through the whole picture. Like every scene has purpose. Everything, like it's like this. Like, just when you think things couldn't get much worse for the hapless protagonist, like, things take a turn for, but like I said, like, it's not like, it doesn't look, it's not like this is a total gritty real world situation that could definitely happen. But at the same time, I said this at the front of all this, it's not fantastical. It doesn't go into the absolutely, like, everything is played very matter-of-factly in the movie, and I think that helps. Like, it's not like, it's not a usual experience to get kidnapped into an organ harvesting clinic, but it's not called there's not attention paid to it like it would be in, like, a Terry Gilliam movie where everything is heightened and it just seems so bizarro and there's weird, it's not a caricature of anything. It's just kind of like, this is the universe these characters inhabit. Everything makes sense and nothing is too exaggerated. And I really love that about this movie.
No, I'm right there with you. You know, it has a real almost literary quality to it. I mean, it's a murder mystery thriller. Like it's hard to classify what this movie is in a lot of ways. And it's not because it's a masala film like Muthu, which is, action, comedy, romance, drama. Like this movie is that, but it is more of a crime movie, I guess. Again, what are Coen Brothers movies? Like they're Coen Brothers movies. Like
there's a lot of it's not funny, like they're telling jokes, but the situations are so, that's what is the Coen sort of feel, is that the situations are so like outlandishly grim in some parts. Like I said, the scene where they've stuffed Pramod into a suitcase and they're getting ready to wheel him out. Like there's so much happening at the same time, but then they decide to stop because the wife wants to get his watch and his rings off of his hands. Like, and it's so unnecessary, but it's so funny. I don't know. There's something funny about the fact that they've got to get this body out, but they pause for a full 30 seconds more so they can get the jewelry off of this poor corpse. I don't know. And at the same time, the guy's playing piano literally for his life. It's just so, like I said, it's comedy of the blackest black. And I loved it. I love that part of it.
It's so grotesque. It's laughable. Like that's it's gallows. It is gallows-esque humor, right? Like it's so like fucked up that you can't help but laugh. Like you said, in that scene where he walks into the bathroom and the guy's just standing there with the gun and he's
right there
washing his hands. It's like, it's hilarious that he's just, because again, it's hilarious only because you can imagine in Akash's head, like, oh my fucking God, like just don't do anything to let him know. And like that is hilarious, but at the same time, completely horrifying in the most believable way.
Ooh, yeah, no, this movie is it's like it just never stops. It's like a roller coaster where just when you think you've got the wavelength all figured out, it throws something else left field at you that doesn't feel shoehorned in or like out of character or out of story, believability. It all really works. It's all of a piece, despite the fact, I think you mentioned like there's a lot of writers attached to this movie.
5.
The story, that's normally like when you have that many writers, things tend to get disjointed and there's no real one unifying vision. That's not the case here. This movie is of a piece and it all works really well. It's so uniform. You wouldn't know that it's a product of 5 different writers.
Well, and I mentioned Sriram Raghavan. He is more or less known for doing noir action thrillers. So this is also like a slower movie for him too. It's not as kind of, if you look at the other movies he's done, the posters alone should give you an idea of the amount of bombast and kind of over the top action and kind of neo-noir style that those movies have. And then you look at the poster for this movie, it's just 2 people back to back, one of them blindfolded. So, and the other one wearing essentially now his signature Ray-Bans. So it's interesting because even who is directing the movie, it's a change for his style. And normally that doesn't work for directors. Normally they kind of, like this is your lane and you're good in that lane. And if you try to deviate, it tends to not be as successful. Like I mentioned, this movie was nominated for a whole hell of a lot of Filmfare Awards, which is the Indian equivalent of the Academy Awards. It won the best film by the critics because they have best film and best film per the critics for the Filmfare Awards, which I think is kind of interesting. And we could be emulating more than just their films, folks. We could be emulating their way that they give awards because they also have best actor per critics and non-critics. And best actor, Ayushmann Khurrana, won for best actor per the critics. And Tabu was nominated for best actress. It won best screenplay. It won a lot of awards and it was really well regarded. I'm actually really surprised of one particular thing. This movie came out in 2018. I'm surprised there hasn't been an American remake yet. Like, I'm genuinely surprised because this is like ripe for remake in America. I don't want to see it. It would not be very good. It would be a poor facsimile of this, but Aren't you kind of surprised this like high concept of a movie has not made its way over to the land of twists and turns that us Americans love so much with our Western cinema and their last minute twists?
Agree. Like, number one, I'm really surprised, because when you look at a movie like Old Boy, which I can't speak to, I mean, that movie was a real sensation. I remember when it came out at the time, and there was nothing else like it, and Korean cinema was really coming into its own. But that movie had everybody talking. I can't say this movie captured the America's attention the way that did, but if you look at, that's the closest thing I can think of in terms of a movie that captures a wide swath of critical and personal acclaim. But then you have what Spike Lee made his version of Old Boy, and it's like frankly it was unnecessary, because the original was so perfect for what it was. I kind of feel, I mean, I know you've already said that this was remade like 3 other times.
2 times, and one is in production right now.
Like, I guess that's fine. Like, for me, like, I can't imagine anything being more definitive than this version of the movie. That could just be the fact that I'm high off of enjoying the movie, recently. But at the same time, I mean, maybe like, if you're thinking globally, like, maybe there are territories that this would work really well in. But I can't see, I mean, I could see them trying to make it here. I'm just thankful that they haven't gotten to it, or they won't do it, because it would just be a pale imitation. Like, this one is so, look, some people don't like seeing like so-called foreign movies because they don't want to read subtitles. And I whatever, I don't agree, but I get that. But this is not a movie.
I actually don't get it. I really don't get it.
Let me qualify. For me, I'm fine. Like, I love this movie, despite the fact that it was it was a little weird. I don't know if this is typical for a Hindi movie, but there were the odd moment where they'd speak English, which I found kind of interesting.
Don't forget that India was occupied by Britain for over 100 years.
I get that, but
that's where it comes from.
Okay.
I will tell you with a certain amount of again, my Indian friends, when I was in India, and when I was in India, they were it was back and forth. They would be talking, and it would be Hindi, and then there'd be English spattered in through there, and then Hindi. Yeah, that's commonplace.
So it's like a mix of like Spanish and English here would be where you're
it's
kind
like
of interchanging.
Certain phrases, certain terms, certain things are kind of just widely accepted as spoken in English as opposed to in Hindi.
No, that makes sense. But I just want to qualify. Like, while I'm fine with subtitles, like, it's personal choice, whatever. If that's not your thing and you're not wanting to see a movie like that, then I don't know what else to tell that person, because you're missing. What I could tell them is, in this case, especially, you're missing out on an incredible viewing experience. And it's really not, there's not a great onus to follow the movie. Like, the movie moves. And after, like any good, so-called foreign, I say so-called because it's foreign here in the US, but not in India. For a movie like this, after the first 5 minutes, you're going to forget that you're reading subtitles, and you're going to be enveloped into the story. That's the best thing I could say about this, is if you're afraid of reading subtitles for whatever reason, don't be, because this movie, like, it's just so, like I said, it captures you from the very beginning, and it's not going to be an impediment to enjoying the story. You're going to follow the story just fine, whether you have to read it in subtitles or not.
The fact that he isn't blind is revealed in the first 20 minutes of the movie is the hook. That's the hook.
Yeah.
Because then it's just like, where does this go from here? Like, what does this mean?
Because normally, like in a movie where that reveal happens, typically that's usually like a second or third act reveal, right? Because up to that point, you've already, it's been impressed upon you for half the movie. But in this case, like you said, it's at the very beginning, and that's not even the biggest twist. That's really like kind of the plot twist that the movie mostly hinges on, to be honest. Because if he's not blind or thought of as blind, then the rest of the movie doesn't really happen in the same fashion. But the fact that, it's revealed so early is a good indication, and there's so much more to happen, is a good indication that this movie goes, as we've described, in a whole lot of directions that you will never see coming. And even like I said, the ending is breathtaking in the best way, because you never, in a movie filled with plot twists that are, just out of nowhere, that's the final one is like, oh, that's so great.
And
Perfect.
it's almost the one, it's not that you don't see it coming, but you have to applaud the writers and the director, who is one of the writers, for practicing restraint in waiting and not letting the cat out of the bag. Like you said, giving us 2 years in the future. Like, whoa, wait, slow down. What now? Like, it's so shocking how well this movie is done, because at any point it feels like it could just fall apart. Not because the movie's bad or that anyone involved isn't qualified to be doing this, but this is a razor thin edge you're walking with this kind of movie, where we've seen plenty of movies like this that just, once the twist happens, it's like, but what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And you start going, what about all these things in the movie that don't make any sense now that they've said X, Y, or Z was A, B, or C? And like, I really can't be effusive enough about this movie. From the actors to the direction to the editing to the music choices, just everything. I mean, we've barely talked about the actors, but Tabu is amazing. And Ayushmann Khurrana, just the fact that he can do everything in this movie and is asked to effectively do everything to really carry the movie. I have not seen him in anything before. And I am not only looking forward to the next time I see him in something, I'm probably going to search out another one of his movies just to see what else he can do, because he's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, we talked about this a little bit earlier, the fact that it would be nice to go back into this movie and rewatch it without knowing any of the twists. I actually, in thinking about this a little more, this actually may be a good movie to rewatch, because as we've said, by about halfway through the movie, like there's doubt as to whether he was ever really blind after the fact, right? Because like you said, one of his eyes was colored weird, and
the
so
one-eyed rabbit.
Right. And it might be kind of fun to rewatch it now, knowing that, okay, this isn't as cut and dried as we thought the first time. It would be interesting to watch it again and look for those little telltale bits. Maybe the filmmakers have been dropping other little breadcrumbs that we just didn't pick up on, or little things that cast doubt that we just let go by and getting swept up with everything else going on. So,
like the characters in the movie believing he's blind, we too may have been duped into thinking he was blind as the audience.
How thematic is that, to actually go back
wild.
and then it's crazy. It's really, I mean, I could not be more effusive. And part of that for me is frankly, like, so we talked about this and you mentioned that you're going to be doing this spinoff, and it sounded exciting to me, but like I said, I have no frame of reference for Indian cinema. I only know the little bits and pieces that I've seen over the years. I've never really, aside from, like I said, Monsoon Wedding. But anyway, I have to thank you again for picking maybe the perfect movie for me, because it had enough of the Western influence and enough of the narrative sort of conventions that I'm used to. But you also get the flavor of India and Pune and all the locations and the music. So I have to wholeheartedly agree that this is the perfect like gateway to Indian cinema, I believe. Not, again, I haven't seen a lot of it, but it strikes me as being perfect for the novice, introduction to the genre.
And you mentioned it, the flavor of India. The cinematography is beautiful. They shoot Pune in a way that, I mean, Pune is considered to be the most livable city in India. So, what's funny is my wife at her job, she works directly with people in Pune, of all places. So it was kind of funny to see the movie taking place in Pune, of all places. But no, it's, that's the thing, when I mentioned the idea of an American remake, like it would lose all that flavor. It would be just taken out immediately. There would be no musical numbers. They would take that out. That would get the movie under that 2-hour time limit that I guess Americans don't like watching anything over 2 hours other than Marvel movies, because now all of those movies are over 2 hours. Almost across the board. But when there's CGI explosions and an amount of strobing lights to give you a seizure, I guess it doesn't matter. But, I think, you mentioned the subtitle thing and this being a good entry point. I think it kind of just goes back to this cultural shift that a lot of people have been dealing with subconsciously or consciously, in my case, of when you put on a movie, you're putting it on to watch it, not to fuck around, not to be on your phone, not to be on your iPad. And if it's, and again, I'm not saying like I'm not saying like that's what it is, but like theoretically, realistically, you put on a movie, it's to watch the movie. Otherwise, don't put it on. I feel like the sentiment in Western society is, okay, I'm going to put it on in the background. I'll be doing something else. This is not the kind of movie. No movie with subtitles can you do that with. And I wonder if that's just the like subtext as to why people don't want to watch subtitle movies and nobody wants to say it or doesn't realize it is, I want to be able to do something else while I'm watching a movie. Because like this deserves your attention because it's a great movie, but also because it is a film in a foreign language to us as Americans or Westerners who speak English, you have to read the subtitles. Otherwise, nothing makes sense. It's just people going through motions and you don't understand the context. I feel like that is now part of it. Less so people don't like to read because that's what everybody would always joke about, right? Like a bunch of, I mean, that is part of it, but it's less the act of reading and more the act of active participating as an audience member in film.
Yeah, could not agree more.
Which is a fucking shame, frankly, as someone who loves movies as much as I do and as much as I know you do.
It's an absolute shame. And even putting aside the subtitle thing, which I think, again, like if you choose not to watch a movie because of that, then you're just missing out. I don't know what else to tell you, but like
choose to eat one kind of food your entire life and never go try anything else. That's what that reminds me of.
But even if, like, let's say for a moment that this movie was either dubbed or it was in English natively, let's just say for a minute, like, but this is a movie that, because so much happens, like moment to moment, like if you're on your phone and you miss the part where they kidnap Simi and now she's in, or, like there's so much that happens that you have to be on your game as a viewer to understand, like, okay, now he's in this clinic, but it's not a clinic. Now I understand that it's an organ harvesting operation. And now, now it's 2 years in the future. Now we're flashing back to this rabbit that we saw in the first. You've got to pay attention. Like this movie demands that, but it's not, it doesn't demand it in a literary sense where important things are happening and you must pay attention you're going to be lost if you don't like maintain focus on what's happening because so much happens so quickly.
Imagine if you missed him taking his contacts out.
The whole movie would change for you.
Well, yeah, like what a completely different movie this is, huh?
Seriously, because then he would be, you would think as a viewer he's legit blind to the whole thing, and you're wondering why. I don't know what it would just the movie wouldn't make sense,
right?
But again, like, and I see this too. I can't escape it. When you have kids, and attention span is a tough thing to manage because you and I, Chris, we were raised for the most part. I mean, I was certainly raised pre-cell phone. I don't know exactly in your life when cell phones entered the picture, maybe a little bit
16, 17. So, but
that's still like you had made it through early adolescence. And I think that period is so crucial. But when you see children who are raised, and I don't want to make this into a rant against like cell phones and screen time and all that stuff. That's not what we're here to talk about. But again, I worry sometimes, like when I'm at a restaurant and I see a mother and a child, and they're both literally on their phones, sitting here, not talking to each other at all. It makes me wonder about, like, what is that doing to, like, would a movie like this even be made 20 years from now, when all of these kids that are raised with zero attention spans, eventually, now we're talking about like TikToks, they're raised to see things in little 30-second bursts. So
the dopamine. It's a dopamine cycle. That's all it is. It's so fucked up.
It's crazy. So again,
to the point where speaking of music, it influences the way artists are making music now. Like Sam Smith making his song, and it's like 1:30. Like, that's not even a song, man. That's some music you threw together for somebody to use, like on TikTok. Because, like you said, now the taste is changing, and it was originally YouTube, and then it was Snapchat, and then it was Vine, and now it's like TikTok, which is God damn. Again, I have no problem with TikTok. I get it as a source of entertainment, but
yeah,
there is a constant fear in my mind that serious narrative film will be less important 20, 30, 40 years from now because people just don't care anymore because like the reasons you've said and things like this, things like so many things that you love, that I love, that you listening to this show may even love, may not stand up to, like you've said, a limited attention span person, which again, I always wonder who is going out and seeing Transformers and driving those movies' budgets and, box offices through the roof, just like with Avatar and other things like that. And it bothers me, but at the same time, I'm glad movies are still being made. But yeah, it does. Yeah. It kind of erodes the need for quality when nobody's paying attention.
Exactly. But gratefully, like this isn't a movie that was made a lot. This was made in 2018.
Yep.
So, this is still a fairly, and not only that, but we have all these remakes that you discussed. So gratefully, we're not talking about a movie from a bygone era necessarily. Like that gives me hope that, I couldn't sit there and say, well, they don't make them like they used to. Well, they did. They made this, 4 years ago. So that's a hopeful thing as a movie goer or someone who enjoys watching movies, that this isn't that old. And clearly there's an audience for it because this movie was hugely successful and made a lot of money and it won a lot of awards. So that's a coal thing as someone who loves cinema.
And you know what? As a Westerner, I don't know culturally. I don't have any friends who are living in India right now anymore. I don't know culturally if they deal with the same issues that we do in terms of how we consume media. Because again, these movies are 2.5, sometimes even 3 hours long. Western audiences can't sit still that long. Some of these movies have intermissions. People don't expect that when they go to the movies. They expect that when they go to the theater. This is an event to go see a movie in India. That's the way that I've perceived it. That's the way it's been told to me. That's the way I've seen it when I was there. It's important. Cinema is important to the fabric of India in a way that, yeah, it's important to American culture, but I think at least the way I perceive it, cinema in India is a true expression of Indian culture. And American cinema is in a way, but the voices are so all over the place in America that it's not just one thing. I'm not saying it is in India either, but it feels more culturally important.
Yeah. No, but it used to be, if you think about a movie like The Ten Commandments, like that movie had an intermission. Like this is something that was an expectation that an American cinema goer would take with them when they went to the movies. Like the movies was a big deal back then, right? Like John Ford movies. All these movies were long, sweeping epics, which is not to say that this movie is a long, sweeping epic, but I was thinking about it after the fact. And when I first brought it up on Netflix, like I thought, okay, this will be like an hour and a half. This will be no problem. And then I'm like, whoa, this is over 2 hours. I wasn't expecting that, but it didn't feel like a 2 hour, like it was over and I went, wow, that 2 hours went by like that.
Right.
So, that's truly skilled filmmaking in my opinion.
Well, and, like we mentioned at the top, normally Indian cinema, at least not normally, but there are plenty of Indian cinema films that don't have musical numbers, but you throw 4 to 5 musical numbers in a movie that are 3 to 4 minutes each. That's 25, 30 minutes that you have increased the length of your film, that Western cinema and Western film goers don't expect there to be musical numbers. So you don't have to worry about 30 to 45 minutes of your movie being occupied with music. But I love that. That's something that I love, that I wouldn't trade for anything with Indian cinema, because that's one of the things that makes Indian cinema.
Sure. That's when a Westerner thinks of that, that's a cultural signifier, right?
Right.
Like, that's almost an expectation when you think of an Indian, whether that's true or accurate, it's probably more of a stereotype than anything, but you're expecting these quote unquote Bollywood dances, highly choreographed, singing like a musical, like you would see in like a Broadway musical. With this movie, you have a touch of that, but I have to applaud them for making a movie. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of I don't know how successful it was, because I certainly never heard of this before you invited me to do the show, but that could have been a part of their scheme when they're doing this. Like, let's make something that's a little bit more palatable to a non-Indian audience, and let's see where this goes, because that's just smart. Expand your audience.
It grossed $1.3 million in the United States. That's how much it made when it came to this country. It grossed 13 million in China it grossed 13 million worldwide. And then it grossed 42 million alone in China.
Interesting.
And I mean, Indian cinema is pretty big in China. Amir Khan has a very big following in China. There are plenty of kind of crossovers, obviously, due to also, proximity, obviously. But yeah, I think for me, that's the one thing that I keep coming back to with this show is there is no easy way to introduce people to Indian cinema. A lot of people, there's no easy way because it doesn't get any play here. At least not, I don't even know, like, does foreign film really get play in the United States anyways?
Well, I can't speak of like as a nationwide thing, but I can tell you that I know that there are movies, because there I don't know how sizable, but there is a significant Indian population, at least around where I live here, to the point where I know there are some of the local theaters will have, like, on a Saturday morning, they'll play whatever the big blockbuster is in India. Like, you'll see posters for Indian cinema, movies all over the place. It's just they played for matinees usually. So there must be, like, there's an audience for them. They're taking, and it's good for the theater because it brings in an audience that wouldn't necessarily be represented as well. So They're probably getting, like, if the local Indian population is aware that they're showing local movies that are of interest to them culturally, then I would assume it brings a lot of Indian folks to the theater that wouldn't normally have the opportunity. Otherwise they're left to. I mean, maybe there's like a movie channel that's devoted just to Indian cinema that I'm not aware of, or Netflix too. Yeah,
Eros Now, it's good, but honestly, Netflix and Prime Video are the places, the repositories for Indian cinema as Westerners. You mentioned a movie theater near you in Dallas, where I grew up. The Cinemarks are everywhere, and they're very large movie theaters, 20, 30 screen type thing. The one that's near my parents' house never showed Indian cinema when I was growing up. They have 10 screens devoted to it now, all the time type thing. Not like you're talking about on a Saturday when it's slow. This is they're showing it at 8:00 on a Friday night, because the population in North Texas is so, predominantly at this point, at least in northwestern North Texas, Indian, Southeast Asian. And again, that's awesome. But the question that I have is, Westerners going to see those movies, or is it just Indian Americans and Indian transplants? Because that's, I would love for more people like myself and yourself to be into Indian cinema, because it is just another opportunity to see movies you've never seen, as opposed to watching the same thing or only having one small piece of a pie here to eat from. So yeah, it's my hope is, with the advent of things like streaming and the internet and, more people, more culturally diverse people living in our country, that we will start to see a more mainstream adoption of Indian cinema. But we haven't really seen a mainstream adoption of any other foreign cinema other than maybe Japanese cartoons.
Because we've seen waves of the things that catch on. I think anime is never been more popular. Just as a blanket term. You go to Barnes and Noble, and there's reams and reams of it.
It used to be one little section, and now it's expand. It's aisles of manga. It's
huge. But I will say, it's like any sort of, I don't want to call it a fad, because that's doing a disservice to a particular genre of film, right? But just for lack of a better term, I know we've seen Japanese pictures come and go, things or Chinese cinema, when Jackie Chan had his fastball, and that became, then all of a sudden he started appearing in American movies. That was a thing. Then when you had Old Boy and this wave of Korean cinema that kind of came and swept through.
It won an Oscar. It won an Academy Award in 2020.
Yeah,
or 2019.
Tremendous.
And I mean, there was a whole thing in the mid 2000s of like J horror being huge. Ringu,
Oh, yeah.
Grudge, just and not only just the originals, the American language, the English language remakes of, you know, Ju-on and the Ring and Ringu. Like those end up being, you know, a Ring movie came out 2 or 3 years ago, a Western Ring movie, as opposed to a, you know, Ringu sequel, which they're still doing in Japan. Yeah, I don't want to say fad either, but it's not sustained. And I would like sustain with Indian cinema as someone who's, you know, very biased about how good it is. But again, you watch a movie like this and there's no bias here. Just watch this movie and you'll get it. Like you'll be able to understand the heights that they can get to, because like any other form of cinema or form of art, the heights are really only dictated by reality, like ability to actually execute on an idea. Like this is as high concept as it gets and they nail it.
Oh, yeah. The highest compliment that I can think of is that this isn't just a really good Indian movie. This is a really good movie. Like you don't have to be somebody who's going to seek out and become an Indian cinephile. All you have to be is a fan of good movies, and you will have a good time watching this. Like that's the one message I want to convey to anybody listening to this show is like, don't, and hopefully we've already made this clear, but don't be apprehensive because you don't know anything about Indian cinema or its conventions. Just if you like movies, go see this movie and you won't be dissatisfied. You'll enjoy it. Believe me.
I was going to say, I'd give you a moment to give your final thoughts, but I think you already did.
I'm sorry.
I think you beat me to it. I appreciate a good wrap up as much as the next guy. To give my final thoughts, I'm with you. I'm so glad, and it actually really makes me happy when I sit down with someone like yourself who had never really seen Indian cinema in any kind of like, I'm not that I'm like being told to watch it, but more it's like, this is a thing that I'm going to sit down and give my full attention to in a critical way. And I always appreciate having people on the show who I've never watched an Indian cinema film with before and hearing them just be like, not in shock, but just like, wow. Like you said, it's not just a good Indian film. It's a good movie. And that is boundary crossing, language barrier destroying on its own. People love Star Wars around the world, not because it's a fucking American movie. It's because it's Star Wars. And people like it because those first 3 movies are pretty goddamn good. But it's crossed cultural barriers because it's a good movie. That's why. And yeah, there are 3 remakes in the pipeline. 2 have come out. 1's on its way for this movie in India alone. That should give you an idea of the quality of this movie if you have to be further convinced at this point. But like you said, if you're already at this point in the episode, there's no convincing. You're with us. You get it. This movie's fantastic. I may even go out and watch Brahman, which is the Amazon Prime Video Malayalam version of the movie, which is another language in India, not Telugu and not Tamil, and it's on Prime Video right now. And is supposedly not bad. Just, kind of more of the same, but if you like the actors, that's why you would watch that one if you're into those actors versus these actors. Because mind you, these are Hindi-speaking actors, and those actors would be speaking another dialect in India. So it's, there are some things that we don't have in this country, like regional cinema, in a way where it's different dialects and different languages, but they're, again, speaking a very, very close version of one another's language. We don't really have that here. So it's interesting to look at that. But at the same time, you put it best. It's not a good Indian cinema film. It's just a good movie. Yeah, and I'm excited to watch more of his films, him being Sriram Raghavan, more Tabu movies, more Ayushmann Khurrana movies. This movie, I didn't pick this movie. This movie wasn't a pick of mine. It was actually suggested to me by who other than the Projection Booth's own Mike White. So he told me to watch it. He said it was amazing. He said, don't look into it. Don't research it. Just watch it. It goes all over the place. And he was right. This movie is fun. It's just a fun experience and one that will leave you guessing up until the final frame. And I hate that term, but it is 100% applicable.
It is, but it's not a whodunit though. That's the interesting thing. Like usually when a movie is described like that, like, oh, you won't know what, like, it's not there's no guessing. There's no mystery about these crimes that are happening. There's mystery about maybe his retelling of the tale, but this isn't like a whodunit where you're always guessing who did it or what, this is just, you never know. Like, we've made this clear already, like what's going to happen from scene to scene. And it goes in to a lot of interesting places, but it's always, look, a lot of awful stuff happens, but it's fun to watch the filmmakers, take you on this journey. That's the best thing about it. It really feels like it's an interesting journey that you're taking on. And the setting is novel because to a Westerner, it's novel. But like I said, and like you've said as well, like this is just like, it would be a pity for somebody not to seek this out because they're afraid of it being a non-English movie, because it's just a really good movie. It's well made. And we couldn't be any more effusive in our praise for it, but go see it. Just stop listening. Go see it. Enjoy
I'm not sure I've ever been this effusive about a movie on any show that I've done. Like this
it's energizing, isn't it? In a way that I haven't really, frankly, haven't been energized watching a movie recently. You feel the same way? I'm
right there with you. Like it was an experience when the end of it, I was just like, I want to, like, I don't know. Like, I want to be involved in making things, because like watching other people getting to make things awesome like that, like it makes me want to be involved in the creative process. That's what it always feels like for the creative types, right? Like when you watch someone else's amazing thing, you're like, I just want to do that too. Like I want to do something as good or better. They watched Hitchcock and Coen Brothers movies and saw those movies and said, we can do this, and we can do this our own way and really fucking nail it. And man, really fucking nailing it is not even far enough. So
no, they beat the Coens at their own game. They made a movie that can stand toe to toe with a movie like Fargo. I mean, that's maybe a little hyperbolic because Fargo's incredible.
I don't think it's remotely hyperbolic, frankly.
But this is I can't say enough good things about it. Like I said, that charge that I got, that I think any real fan of film gets when they see something and they feel like they've watched something unique and interesting. And like you said, a creative type gets that charge, like, wow, these guys, like they fired on all cylinders, and I just feel so energized at the end of it. Like I want to just, like, it's the kind of thing that makes you want to seek out the rest of that filmmaker's catalog, right?
Yeah.
I've had this introduction to Indian cinema, such as it is, and now I know I love the actors, I love the filmmakers, I love the writing. I'd be more likely to go out and seek that out instead of just kind of, because that content is out there. I'm sure Netflix is filled with movies like this. Amazon Prime probably has a ton of movies like this. I just haven't put in the time and effort to find them, but they're there.
And to be fair, the algorithm hasn't known that you wanted to watch them yet either.
Right.
That's
great.
That's always the kicker. So, but now it does. So HP, until the next time you're here with me, because this doesn't sound like this is a singular event now, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would, I'm glad that it wasn't like a bummer, because then it would have been like a hard sell to get you back. Like, hey, you want to watch another 2.5 hour movie that may or may not be good?
No, this was entirely, like I said, it was perfect that I didn't know what, I had no preconception, and I just allowed it to cast its spell. And I can't thank you enough for giving me the opportunity to see something I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So thank you, Chris.
You're most welcome. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, but I'll give you the opportunity now. HP, where can people find you if they want to on the internet?
So, right. So you can find me. I am a musician. You can hear some of my compositions sprinkled across various podcasts, not the least of which is Wolf and Raisin, the Banachek podcast, Night Mr. Walters, a taxi podcast, which I co-host with my erstwhile partner, Father Malone. I am also an occasional contributor to CultureCast, and now this very fine spinoff, which I'm very happy to have done.
Me too. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad to have made your acquaintance, HP.
Like I said, I really appreciate, being introduced to. I love doing these podcasts with you. Not to get too far into this, but I love the opportunity to talk movies with you, Chris, and I look forward to more and more of that in the new year.
I agree. So you can hear me and Harris, like he mentioned, over at weirdingwaymedia.com, which is where all the shows that Harris mentioned, along with all of the shows that I've talked about, mentioned offhand, and this one, all there. weirdingwaymedia.com. New shows coming out seemingly every month now at this point. And yeah, Harris, HP and FM and HD all have a show together called NJ. So go and go figure that out.
I'm sorry. How could I leave out? By the time this show drops, we will already have started the Noise Junkies podcast, which we are all very, very excited. Father Malone, HD, and myself, and look for that as well.
Yeah, and that's where you can find us. As for this show, BollywoodCinemaClub.com on all platforms, but like, rate, review on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you find this show, because that helps us get to more people who aren't watching Indian cinema, but should be. HP, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a blast.
It's my pleasure, Chris. Thank you.
And as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.